Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series and co-author of the Parable Port series, and it's a Fear Street day because, I think I might have just read my new favorite Fear Street book. I absolutely loved book number 4, Missing by R.L. Stine in the Fear Street series. Now, if you're new to Fear Street is a YA horror thriller series, more on the thriller side really than horror, series that came out in the 90s. And they are absolutely so much fun. I never read these as a kid. When I was younger, I discovered them later in life, and I am so glad I did because they have been absolutely so fun to read. Some of them are not as good as others, but I don't think I've read one yet that I've thought, oh, that was kind of a bad book or I didn't like it very much. I have really liked all of the ones I've read. And some of them have just entered, that second tier of, oh, these are really good. Now, previously, my favorite book was Haunted, which I absolutely love that book. And I am going to just say here, this book, Missing, is going to be probably a parallel favorite for me because it's very different from Haunted, and I like Haunted for very different reasons than I like this one. To me, Haunted, and I know Haunted is not everyone's favorite, but I love Haunted because of the emotional journey that it takes the reader on, as well as the spookiness and the mystery and the twists that take place, which really did shock me. And this book, speaking of twists, is like a twisty pretzel from the fair because this thing had me in every other direction, wondering what is going on. I actually called my brother halfway through reading this book. I was on page 80, if you really want to know. And I told him, I said, here's where I'm at, because I knew he had read it. And I said, here's where I'm at. And he was asking me, what are your theories? What do you think? And so I ran down this whole list of theories, which some of them I will admit were correct. Some were not. Some were just wild, and maybe it's this, I have no idea. And it pretty much, though, had me in every single direction wondering what's actually going on in this book. I loved this one. So, Fear Street is a street in the town of Shadyside. And in Shadyside, there are very mysterious things that take place all the time, especially on Fear Street. And this book takes place in November, so it's a perfect read for as of the recording of this video. I read it in November, which I thought was a perfect time to read this book because there's a lot of chill in the air, slight about to snow kind of stuff that takes place in this book. So it's perfect for an after Halloween November read. Perfect. They even talk about it being November in this book. So in Missing, you have this brother and sister, Mark and Kara, and they are new to Shadyside. They've just moved there a little while ago. Their parents are working as computer mainframe installers at this company, and the brother and sister are having, a little bit of a time adjusting to a new town, as one does, and they end up having kind of a fight with the parents in the morning. Well, later that day, they decide, our parents aren't home yet from work, so let's throw a party. So they're throwing a party, and while they throw this party, Kara starts to realize, man, our parents never came home. They didn't leave us a note. They haven't tried calling. Is something wrong? And they soon discover, after the party shuts down, that their parents are indeed missing. Something has happened to them. What it is, Mark and Kara are determined to find out. And I actually don't want to say anything else about the plot in this book. I also will tell you, do not read the back of this book. This is one of the ones where I feel like if you want to go in with no spoilers whatsoever, the back of this book actually gives you a ton of hints about what is going to possibly happen in the book. And so I thought, no, I didn't read the back when I went in. I read it afterwards and I thought, why would you give that away on the back of the book? Do not say that. Don't read the back of this book or read any of the paragraphs online about it. Just read it. If you like Fear Street, you're going to love this one, I think. If you like spooky thrillers, you're going to love this one. Oh, it's so good. There's so many twists and turns. So let's talk about it without any spoilers. Now, I gasped out loud multiple times. There was a couple of moments where I stopped reading and I said, wait, what? No, no, that can't happen. What? Over and over and over again while I was reading this book. It was that excellent. It's a very twisty plot. Now, I will say this about the plot. There's a lot of pieces to it, and you do got to follow along, but I will tell you, all of your questions get answered, because I got to the end of the book and I was thinking, wait, what about that? And then it was answered. And then I thought, what about that? And it was answered. So all of your questions do get answered. Now, I got to say too, though, I went into this book and I started reading it and realized, okay, parents are missing. That's our basic plot here. And I thought, oh man, this has such a good setup. Will it deliver? And that was my biggest question. Even when I was talking to my brother about halfway through, I asked him, like, do you feel like the book delivered for you on the premise that it set up? Because I feel like sometimes there are really great ideas that are set up in a book. And it's like a really good premise, like a really great idea. And then the execution of it or the ending of it ends up being so disappointing. I recently discovered this from actually a Hardy Boys book that I read, where the premise was excellent, so fun, but then the ending was just really dumb. And I thought, oh, that's what's going on? Like, that seems really stupid to me. And so I was wondering, what's going to be going on here? And I will say, this had a great ending. It delivered for me. I will say, the ending did have a tiny bit of, here's all this ribbon and we're going to tie it all into bows. Here we go. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, tied up. And so I did think a little bit like, okay, that's kind of tied up pretty neatly, but I still was satisfied with it. There are a lot of twists and turns, a lot of characters on the board. There's a lot of all kinds of things going on, like different sorts of things that are taking place, all parallel with each other. So it's a little tricky to follow. The other thing I will say about this one is that it's written in first person from 2 character perspectives. Now, this has been done in many books. I think, for instance, the one that came to my mind was in Rick Riordan's Kane Chronicles. He had a brother and sister pair who they told the story from first person back and forth. However, in that book, Rick Riordan set it up where it would have like the name of the character at the top of the chapter. So as a reader, when you're going in, you know, oh, okay, this is from this character's perspective this time. This book does not do that. It's basically about like 3 chapters in this perspective, 3 chapters in this perspective, till the end when it starts going a little more like this chapter from this one, this chapter from this one, back and forth. And so I feel like it was expertly done. I do think it takes a second sometimes to remember who are we in, like what point of view are we in. So that took me a second to follow, but then I was able to track, because usually R.L. Stine does this. R.L. Stine's actually very clever with his first person narration. He's very good about dropping hints in the first 1 or 2 pages of the chapter to tell you exactly who's the narrator at that given time. So he'll drop like the name of the sibling, or he'll drop like a character that sibling knows and we know that character's involved with that character. It's a little confusing sounding, but it makes sense. R.L. Stine does a pretty good job piecing that together, which I really thought was well done. Overall, this one delivers also on the scares. There were 2 sequences that I legit was kind of looking at the doors and windows and being like, oh, I don't like this. I definitely went to go make sure all the doors and windows were locked in our house while I was reading this book. Because there's one sequence, I was reading this at nighttime in the dark, and I just had like my book light and I was reading it and I was like, I'm just gonna go double check that the doors are locked, because it creeped me out that much. It was really well done. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was just excellent. From the characters, I feel like the characters are pretty Pretty interesting, actually, for R.L. Stine. The girl's a little more of a typical R.L. Stine character, and she has that kind of sassy wit that a lot of his female characters have. And the guy here is actually kind of interesting. He's like an archer who's a jock, and so it was an interesting perspective because R.L. Stine doesn't always play with that characterization or that kind of a narrator, so I thought that was well done, actually. So the characters are great. They set up those scares really well because they're in their heads and they are wondering the same things you are wondering. It was so excellent. So many great moments throughout this book. So many good red herrings that will lead you down all kinds of paths, but they will be answered very well. Just excellent. This is one of the best Fear Street books. I think if it had a weakness, I would say the only weakness is that ending could be seen as being a little too tightly, neatly wrapped up. But otherwise, oh, this was a good one. Now, one other thing I do need to say, and if you want absolutely no spoilers, skip ahead just like a minute because there's one thing I do want to tell you. If you are, okay, so skip ahead if you want no spoilers whatsoever. I'm not going to be spoiling any major plot points. It's just a thing that some people might not like that I want to warn you about in case you want a warning about a subject matter that's in the book. Okay, this is your last chance. Here we go. So there's one scene where a character does have an encounter with an animal, and that animal is killed. And I will say I was actually pretty shocked by the scene, and I thought, oh, if there's people that really have just sensitivities about animals that way, you will want to be aware of this. It comes up later in the book. It's not near the beginning, it's later on, and it's in the woods is what I will tell you. So when you're in the woods, just be aware if you're sensitive about animal type things like that might be a part you want to skip. Or you might just avoid this one altogether if that's something that really does bother you quite a bit. So I just wanted to give you that warning so you had the heads up about it. All right, that's all. So let's talk about how do I rank this book. So at the end of the day, I would definitely give Missing 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. It was so excellent. It had the creepiness. It had the plot twist I love. It had great characters. It had just so many elements that I love in a book. I've seen some people saying that they thought this book was too complicated. I did not think it was too complicated, but I do like reading really twisty stories, like fantasy stories with a lot of plot twists, or mystery stories with a lot of plot twists, or international intrigue kind of stories. I love that stuff. So this just hit all the buttons for me that way. I really enjoyed it. But I could see where some people, if they want a more straight up slashery Fear Street book, this might not be for them because it does have a lot of twists and turns. I would also recommend reading this not broken up into lots of segments. I would recommend reading it pretty quick because I think it benefits from a quicker reading of the book. So when you have some time to really devote to it, a couple of hours here and there, just in a few days in a row to read through it, I recommend that because I think it really benefits from a quickly read story because there are a lot of pieces going on, and it was an excellent binge read. I basically binged this book. I read it within 24 hours because I just couldn't stop reading. I had to go to work and I had to do other things, but then every spare moment I had, I was picking that book back up to keep reading because I was like, I just want to know what's going on. So many good moments. Also, I will say no fake out chapters, really. There aren't any real fake outs that take place. Sometimes R.L. Stine does that where he'll have kind of a fake out spooky ending of a chapter and then it's like a cat scratching at a door. Not really anything like that. It's pretty straightforward and just really well done. So this one is definitely, if you are looking for a good Fear Street book to read, this one is excellent. So good. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.